Hi. In today's short lecture, I want to talk to you a little bit about perception checking. So, perception checking is just really a technique for making sure that you understand how another person perceives your communication. So, with perception checking, there are three elements. Anytime we perform perception checking, we want to do three things. We want to offer the other person that we're talking to a description of the behavior that you notice. What are they doing that's made you question whether or not you perceive their response accurately? Then, whenever possible, you want to try and provide at least two possible interpretations of their behavior. And then finally, just request a clarification about how to interpret that behavior. So, for example, if I notice that my friend is looking sort of unhappy for a little while, I could say something to the effect of, I notice you haven't laughed much in the past couple days, which is the behavior, right? So, step one. It makes me wonder whether something's bothering you. So, that's one possible interpretation. Or if you're just feeling quiet, which is a second possible interpretation. And then finally, I ask him simply, what's up? Right? This is a request for clarification. Now, part of the reason that we offer a couple of different interpretations is because, number one, we don't want to assume that our first one is correct. Again, as we talked about in last class, in the last short lecture, we oftentimes engage in something known as attribution bias. And with attribution bias, we're attributing motives to other people's behavior, and oftentimes these motives just aren't correct. We're wrong about why people act the way they do. So one of the ways we could figure out why people are behaving in certain ways and how they're perceiving communication is to ask them. And so that's what perception checking is. And we offer a series, or at least two different interpretations to let them sort of know, hey, this is kind of the way I see it, but I'm not sure if either of these are even correct. Right? So don't assume that your first interpretation is correct. Now, it's important to realize that sometimes you don't have to perform all three steps. Sometimes a perception check won't need to include all the elements listed on the last slide in order to be effective. Sometimes, particularly if you know the person, something as simple as, hey, what's up? What's going on with you? Can do the job. Generally speaking, complete perception checks following all three steps are most needed when the risk of misjudgment is the highest. So you have to ask yourself in these kinds of situations, what's at stake? What are the stakes involved? And what happens if I interpret their behavior incorrectly? And if the answer is that it's really impactful, right? If it can mean something like getting fired or getting a divorce or hurting a loved one's feelings, then it's really important maybe to walk through all three of the steps we listed earlier. Now, it's also important that we offer what's called nonverbal congruency when we perform perception checks. What that means, it's a fancy term, but what that means is that your tone and your body language should match the open-mindedness of your words. So, for example, if I ask you, hey, what's up? That's got a different tone than if I ask someone, yeah, what's up? You see, and my tone and my body language, even though I might be trying to be honest and earnest and really care about how the person feels, if I'm not careful about my tone and body language, I might suggest that I'm being critical in some way of the person. Now, generally speaking, perception checks work best in what we call low context cultures. Now, a low context culture is one in which members use language as directly as possible. Generally, the U.S. is considered a low context culture. Compared to many other cultures, we seem to, in this country at least, say what we mean. In high context cultures, they value social harmony over directness. So they're more interested in people getting along, right, as a group, than in actually saying what they mean. And oftentimes, indeed, they go out of their way not to say what they mean in order to preserve social harmony, in order to keep everyone in the group happy. Now, again, because you're actually sort of calling someone out, you're asking for a clarification when you're perception checking, then it makes sense that it works best in a low context culture where people are allowed to speak frankly to one another. Because in a high context culture, asking somebody, just outright, what's up, can create embarrassment or bad feelings. So, along with clarifying meaning, perception checking can also sometimes help us save face, right? And help other people save face. In other words, it's a way of finding out how people feel while not embarrassing them or ourselves. So, for example, I might ask my wife, "Are you planning on doing those dishes later, or did you just forget it's your turn?" Right? That's a form of perception checking. And my meaning here is very clear, no doubt. I want her to do the dishes, and I'm nudging her, "Hey, it's your turn." But there's a big difference between asking something like, "Are you planning to do those dishes later, or did you forget it's your turn?" Or saying, "What's the matter with you? You need to wash the damn dishes." So, I mean, you see, it's really the phrasing that's at issue here. And in one way, I'm being confrontational, but when I'm doing the perception checking method, what I'm doing is trying to help my wife save face, to not be embarrassed by the question. All right, that's it. Just a quick lecture today, and next time I'll talk to you about empathy, cognitive complexity, and communication. Thanks.